Live on our flagship radio home, 88.7 WRSU FM New Brunswick. Also online at WRSU.org. And every episode archived on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, iHeart, Amazon, and the like. Find us on the web at motorsportstoday.net. Find us on the socials at Motorsports Today. I'm Eddie Kalegi. Adam Tropper going to be joining us in just a few minutes' time. No races this weekend, but we have a lot to talk about that's gone on over the last few days. Turmoil at Ferrari, what John Elkann said about Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc, how they're reacting, and what that should lead to into the final three races of the season. IndyCar news that came out of nowhere yesterday. We'll talk about that off the rip. Plus, NASCAR, we're getting down to it, just 3 weeks until the trial set in the ongoing antitrust lawsuit between 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports against NASCAR's hierarchy. 2311 and Front Row Motorsports want Rick Hendrick to speak. Rick Hendrick does not want to speak. We are going to get into that. Plus, NASCAR also releasing all of its dates and times for races in 2026. I got some opinions on that, so does Tropper. But let's take you through what you might have missed during the week with our pit stop. Starting in IndyCar announced yesterday with Kyle Larson not set to do the double for the third consecutive year. Arrow-McLaren will still enter a fourth car in the Indianapolis 500 in May, and it will be the 2014 winner and the most recent champion of the NTT IndyCar Series to not drive for Ganassi or Penske, that being Ryan Hunter-Reay, who was up towards the front last year before pit road issues took him out of the race. RHR drove for Dreyer Reinbold last season. We're going to hear from him as well as Tony Kanaan in just a couple of minutes. In Formula One, comments from John Elkann, the president of Ferrari, in regards to his drivers in Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc. Elkann saying, quote, that the drivers should talk less and focus more on driving in a statement from Milan this past week, going further and saying, quote, in F1, we have mechanics who are always the first in executing pit stops. We have engineers who work to improve the car. We need drivers who think more about Ferrari and less about themselves. Ferrari finished second in the Constructors' Championship last year. The way things are going could end up as badly as fourth in the Constructors in 3 races' time. Leclerc's had some good results, got wiped out last week in Brazil by Oscar Piastri. Lewis Hamilton suffered damage on the first lap of the race and ultimately retired as well. And then in NASCAR, this ongoing lawsuit a couple of weeks away. 2311 Racing Front Row Motorsports are asking for Rick Hendrick not to be allowed to testify at the trial set for December 8th because he cannot agree on a time for a deposition with them beforehand. 2311 Front Row Motorsports want a deposition with a fellow owner who signed the charter agreement, and they do not want NASCAR calling him on as a witness without the deposition. But at this point, we have not seen a schedule set. Chevrolet announcing their livery or their car for 2026. Their body in the NASCAR Cup Series will be the Camaro ZL1 Carbon Performance Package compared to the 2025 entry for Chevrolet, which includes NASCAR Cup Series champion Kyle Larson, a larger hood power dome, revised front grille, and more pronounced rocker panels on the Chevrolet entry that will be piloted by Hendrick, RCR, Trackhouse, and others in 2026. The 2026 NASCAR schedule was set back in August. Dates, times, networks officially set for 2026. We're going to have some reaction to that later in the show. Well, that's our pit stop, but let's start things off with IndyCar because this news kind of came out of nowhere. We know that these rides tend to come about a few months before the season begins for the Indianapolis 500. We know Dreyer Reinbold has had multiple entries the last couple of years with Ryan Hunter-Reay, Jack Harvey. Jack Harvey, I believe, is slated back with them. We've heard Connor Daly rumored to race for them because it seems like he's going to be left out of the shuffle of a full-time ride with Juncos Hollinger going with Rinus VeeKay to pair up with Stingray Robb for 2026. But hadn't heard many rumblings out of Arrow-McLaren besides the fact that it's a pretty understood fact at this point that with as disastrous as the double has been the last 2 years for Kyle Larson, we probably wouldn't see him attempt it, at least right now, for a third time after he couldn't even make it to the Coke 600 the first time around, and then this past year crashing in both races. But Ryan Hunter-Reay, who ran really well in the month of May this past year for a lower-funded team, still has it at the ovals, goes to a team that has nearly won the Indy 500 twice in the last 3 years with Pato O'Ward as their fourth driver. Here is Ryan Hunter-Reay and Tony Kanaan speaking with the media yesterday as RHR Captain America will captain the fourth entry in the Indianapolis 500 for Arrow-McLaren this spring.
Well, as you know, the month of May will be here before we know it. And once again, Arrow-McLaren will feature 4 entries for the Indianapolis 500 presented by Gainbridge earlier this morning, just an hour ago, actually. The team announced that Ryan Hunter-Reay will be making a run at his 18th 500 and will be doing so in the number 31 Arrow-McLaren Chevrolet, the number 31 matching the car number that he first ran with back in his IndyCar Series and then Champ Car Series debut back in 2003, and the 2014 Indy 500 winner and 2012 IndyCar Series champion joins us this morning, as does the team principal for Arrow-McLaren and the 2013 winner of the 500 and Tony Kanaan. Fellas, good morning. Thanks for doing this. TK, let's start with you. You two were teammates for a year back at Andretti, reunited in a much different way now. Tell us how it all came together.
We were just talking about off camera. Obviously, you know, we were only teammates for a year, but the chemistry that we had that year was actually awesome. And my departure from Andretti at the end of the year cut that, I think, chemistry that we had. We worked really, really well together. To be fair, it's, as far as setup wise, he was the closest teammate I had to run something similar. But over the years, we still kept being friends. Our families are friends. I mean, my wife's and kids. So fast forward, the first time I called him, I said, would you ever imagine that I have a possibility to actually be your boss? And he laughed. So what it came about, Dave, you know, what we're trying to build here, Arrow-McLaren, since I've been here, is to grow the team as far as, you know, winning the Indy 500, winning the championship, all the things that every team will set a goal in the beginning of the year. And I think, to me, the fourth car, if you look at the history of this fourth car, especially with the past driver we had, which was Kyle Larson, it's an understatement to overcome even a figure that big to go, oh, it's going to be big news. But the intention of running that car since before me, because if you look at Montoya, ran that before, is to have another chance to win the 500. And I think both of us came from a 4-car team that put all the efforts on that. I landed at this place because of that in 23, if you guys remember. So to me, it was like, I need a winner. I need a guy that is going to be able to win the Indy 500. And there's not many guys that are available right now. I told people that if they were going to mention me one more time, I was going to fire whoever's saying that, because I'm not coming back. You know, it's been very confusing for me. And I called Ryan, and I'll let him talk about the details, but I called him. I said, hey, it's you and I. We are going to negotiate, you and I, and we have 3 days to do it. And we made it happen.
Yeah, it all happened very fast.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, Ryan, I mean, congrats. What an awesome opportunity. And it's obviously always great to see you back at Indianapolis. And, you know, you certainly, you know, that it wasn't the result you had or wanted last year, but you made a great run at it. So this is going to be another great opportunity. What's it mean for you to join a team like this, Tony Kanaan and the others?
It's huge. It's massive. I mean, you know, the atmosphere within this place, where this team currently is, right? The trajectory they've been on, that trend, they've come close. They've been one of the best. Arrow-McLaren has been one of the best teams at Indy the past few years, and it continues to work in that direction on road courses, street circuits. Everything's kind of hitting its stride here, and that's huge credit to Tony, Kyle, everybody here that's really shaping this into a major powerhouse. And I'm thrilled to be a part of it, and I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to hopefully better the team in any way that I can, contribute And yeah, it's just it's a fantastic opportunity. The moment I walked in the door, so many familiar faces that I've worked with forever. Now somehow Tony's my boss. He's been bossing me around this place for 2 days straight. But it's great to see a lot of people that I've worked with here, both on the engineering side and the crew. So yeah, I felt at home immediately, and we both feel that urgency at Indy, right? Coming off of team second place, my situation with coming very close to having a real shot at that fight at the end, the win, and just understanding the fact that I have such a passion for Indy, and to do it with this team and this group, and this opportunity is something that I'm very grateful for.
And Dave, we're going to open for questions. I don't want to take over, but there is some little bits and pieces and bits here that I think we should mention. Coincidentally, Ryan was extremely disappointed after what happened to him last year. Monday morning, he is packing his own, because he's cheap. So he's packing his own bus, his 400 strollers and golf carts. And Daria and I approached him at the bus lot. And you remember the conversation we had?
Yeah.
He was very disappointed. And I looked at him and says, why are we still doing this? I just try, because you talk about two retired guys talking to one that's like, what? Tell me why, because do you really need to be that mad? Not like, do you need this real life? And that is what actually led to this. So I leave it at that, because that is something else that I wanted to add that nobody knew.
Yeah.
We had no idea why. I wasn't fishing for it.
No.
It was just Daria and I talking to a friend that we care, that had the most heartbreaking. Indy can do that to you.
Absolutely.
And
yeah.
we are. Now I'm responsible not to break his heart.
Well, that is Tony Kanaan, Ryan Hunter-Reay, speaking about RHR's ride with Arrow-McLaren for the 2026 Indianapolis 500. Adam Tropper joining us now on the show. And Tropper, I'm kind of surprised that it took this long for RHR to get a ride like this for the Indy 500. He proved how competitive he was in a dry Reinbold car, and that team is very bottom of the barrel. Besides Dale Coyne, and you'll have those like offhand like one car entrants. That's probably about as lower tier of a team as you can drive for in the Indy 500. And we have seen people from his era that have semi-retired that run great year in and year out in this series, whether that be, Ed Carpenter when he runs the Indy 500 for his own team, and that's the only race he runs. Elio Castroneves each and every year still looks 30, even though he's pushing 50. Takuma Sato, he destroys his car in April and then ends up pulling off what he did, and now we see him here. You see Ryan Hunter-Reay getting this opportunity. I think this is a really good move for Arrow-McLaren to make themselves more competitive in the month of May, and certainly, even though the storyline with Kyle Larson has been cool, I think you're going to get a lot more competitive of a car with Ryan Hunter-Reay than you would with Kyle Larson. Sounds like we're having some issues getting Tropper's connection, but that's my thoughts. That's my 2 cents on Ryan Hunter-Reay. So let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to get into some Formula One talk here. A lot of drama with Ferrari. John Elkann, Lewis Hamilton, Charles Leclerc. Where does this team stand? Where do they go from here? We'll step aside, be back in a moment here on Motorsports Today on 88.7 WRSU FM New Brunswick, online at WRSU.org. Always available on Spotify and wherever you get your podcasts. Back here, Motorsports Today, 88.7 FM, WRSU.org, always available YouTube, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Find us on the web, motorsportstoday.net. Find us on the socials at Motorsports Today. So we opened with the IndyCar news. Ryan Hunter-Reay driving for Arrow-McLaren in the Indianapolis 500 in 2026. As I said, I think a net positive move for that team, moving on from Kyle Larson. But let's go to Formula One now. John Elkann telling Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc that they should talk less and focus on more driving the car more. And a direct attack at the drivers. There's no real way to get around it. I saw a lot of people commenting that Sky Sports made a video on social media available in America. And when that happens, usually it's something huge, because usually you don't see anything from Sky Sports in the U.S. It always says that it's blocked in your area. Yet I could see John Elkann speaking about these drivers. And I mean, we're going to dissect this a little bit, Tropper, but this is just a crazy, crazy comment to send to your drivers. And I know this year has not gone to plan for Ferrari, but in terms of building momentum for next year, to throw your drivers under the bus and say that they're talking too much and not doing enough themselves, and that the mechanics are doing no wrong and that it's simply the drivers, is just an outlandish comment to make when you're trying to build towards next year, when this year is kind of a lost cause.
Oh, absolutely. And first off, apologies for the tech difficulties earlier. Seems like we got that sorted out. But yeah, I didn't read too much into, well, actually I didn't get to read the comment this morning. So this is actually the first I'm hearing about it. So you're getting my raw take right here. But that is bizarre to say that drivers can't be talking to each other. I mean, in F1, you only have one teammate. You need to rely on that for back and forth information. And I know teams operate, every constructor, they operate in different ways. It's obviously different than NASCAR in terms of how teammates share information. I understand that. But to say that your drivers aren't putting in enough focus, they're talking to each other too much, I assume from like a leisure standpoint, that just doesn't make sense. It shows no accountability, and the season's not even over yet. Plus, one of your two drivers is arguably one of the best to ever do it, a literal 7-time champion. And yes, Lewis Hamilton is not what he used to be, but at the same time, that is a crazy statement. And to your point with Sky Sports, the only thing I can think of is with the Las Vegas GP coming up. Maybe they're trying to reach that drama to the American audience a little bit more. But still, I mean, this is as bizarre as it gets. And we've talked about with McLaren, too, kind of their internal struggles throughout the season, how to deal with Oscar versus Lando and who's the top dog. And this is obviously a little bit different, but it's just unnecessary more than anything.
Yeah, I do think that what Elkin said was not as much about the drivers talking to each other, Tropper, but more about them talking to the media and talking on social media. I think that's what he was kind of implying, that they're... Yeah.
Yeah, so that doesn't change it too much. I mean, I get it. You don't want your drivers barking on social media, but I mean, at the same time, that's not going to be taken. They're professional drivers. That's not going to be taking away their focus from the track. So maybe it changes my answer slightly, but at the same time, I still think it was an uncalled for comment mid-season.
So what Lewis Hamilton said in response to this on social media was, quote, "I back my team, I back myself, I will not give up, not now, not then, not ever, thank you Brazil, always." So I kept it simple, but said, you know what, yeah, I care about Ferrari, but I also care about myself. Charles Leclerc didn't really speak specifically on this. He said, quote, "A very difficult weekend in Sao Paulo. Disappointing to come back home with nearly no points at all for the team in what is a critical moment of the season to fight for a second place in the Constructors' Championship. It's uphill from now, and it's clear that only unity can help us turn that situation around in the last 3 races. We'll give it our all, as always." But this is my whole thing, and if you want to check it out, a little more of a deep dive of someone who really, really knows the sport, Rohan Singh posted an article on our website, motorsportstoday.net, basically saying that this is not some outlier situation, that really over the last 20 years, Ferrari's mismanagement has sabotaged its own really talented drivers, and this is simply a latest example of that, and he goes into a little more depth about how this has kind of occurred over the years with Ferrari, but I mean, my whole contention here, Tropper, is why are you rocking the boat? Why are you coming out and making these comments about your drivers with 3 races left in the season? And there is such a potential still for Ferrari. First of all, Charles Leclerc, I know I've ripped on him on this show. He's been really fast lately. I mean, he had a couple of second-place runs in succession. He was running second when he got taken out by Oscar Piastri last week. Ferrari has still been quite competitive, and there's still opportunity to close out the season on a high note with Leclerc. This is also the same driver lineup that you are going to have with you in 2026 when the regulation changes happen and the playing field's going to be leveled, and suddenly Ferrari could be in a much more competitive spot. But now when both drivers think they've got to walk on eggshells, and I know Lewis Hamilton is not going to walk on eggshells because that's not the type of person he is, but when they're being scrutinized by their team boss this, it hurts the chemistry, it hurts the morale, and I can't see how this doesn't hurt the performance heading into 2026 to do this so late in the year and just cloud things heading into what should be a very promising season for them. I know we thought that about Ferrari this year, but it's even more of a chance next year when everything's leveled out with the regulation changes.
Oh, yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, there's been instances in all forms of motorsport. I think NASCAR, some examples we've talked about on the show, where a driver's on their way out the door, the team owner says something, there's a little bit of internal drama, but it doesn't really matter because the dynamics can change the next season. The reason I said unnecessary is because these are the guys that you've already locked in on multi-year contracts. And hopefully, for their sake, Ferrari's sake, it's just a very small, minute comment that's going to be washed away and forgot about by next week. But at the same time, you can't help but wonder, you're right, how does this affect the chemistry? How does this affect, especially for Leclerc, who's not the 7-time champion world great that can just kind of walk around and do whatever, for lack of a better term? Like, will he be walking on eggshells? Will he feel like he's on thin ice? Will it mess with the chemistry and overall dynamic of the team? This is the stuff you don't know and you have to take into account. And that's why it's these types of comments from bosses and leadership that I just feel are not only unnecessary, but unprofessional and uncalculated. What was the point of saying this to the public, to the media, and stirring up the drama? It's one thing if you want to do it behind the scenes, if you want to say, look, we need to focus more on this, but like that isn't that what internal weekly meetings are for? What is the point of making this public drama? And that's what I don't understand. That's what frustrates me.
And I mean, I've said it on the show before, Ferrari's the Dallas Cowboys of F1. I mean, there's so much hype every single year. They have like these stacked rosters, allegedly, and then every year there's all this hype going in and then nothing comes to fruition. This is, if you think of F1 and if you're a casual and if you ask someone who's a casual to name a constructor in F1, a lot of people are probably going to say Red Bull now, but I venture to say that Ferrari is the car brand, is the name that you associate with F1 the most. And this name has not won anything since 2008, despite boasting in their stable since 2008. Michael Schumacher, Fernando Alonso, Kimi Räikkönen, Sebastian Vettel, Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz, Lewis Hamilton. I mean, you've got 5 world champions of the 7 people I just named there, and the 2 that aren't, Sainz and Leclerc, are very, very good. I mean, they have had the talent through the years, and as Rohan, and I do suggest taking a look at that article because Rohan really went in depth with this, but you think back to, say, Fernando Alonso, in terms of a young hotshot prospect, was not far off of Lewis Hamilton. Got into the sport a couple of years earlier than Lewis, but had an early Drivers' Championship win, goes to Ferrari, and, I mean, didn't have a ton of competition besides Hamilton and Vettel in that era, but was unable to stand out from the pack. And then Vettel goes from Red Bull to Ferrari. That was not a washed Vettel move, like I'd say that maybe Lewis Hamilton is a little bit going to Ferrari now. Vettel was very much still on the top of his game. When Vettel went to Ferrari, he'd won 3 of the last 5 world championships and just became a shell of his former self. And we saw Vettel even move on to other teams at the end of his career that certainly were not very good, and he still produced good results because he was still a good driver. And I just feel like Ferrari keeps holding back their drivers, and of course, mechanics change, personnel changes. They have a new team principal now. But the one thing that doesn't change is leadership. It's the same people. And when leadership continually produces poor results when on paper you have a good team, that means there's a culture issue. That's the case in any other sport, and I think that's the case in Formula One too, Tropper. And I think right now Ferrari has a culture issue, and a prime example of that is the president coming out and saying in a statement 3 weeks before the season ends, ahead of a very anticipated season, that your drivers aren't focusing.
Exactly. I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself there. And you see throughout the years, especially, I'm actually looking at Rohan's article right now, so I will echo you in saying go to motorsportstoday.net. It is very informative, to say the least. I feel like I'm learning on the spot. But point being, if Ferrari has refused to change, but I think I've said this on the show under different contexts, but doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different result, is the definition of insanity. That is exactly what Ferrari seems to be doing with their leadership. They aren't willing to change. They aren't willing to modernize their leadership. And the comparison I make, and I hate to draw it to NASCAR, but think Richard Childress Racing and RCR. Richard Childress is by far probably the most old school, like shoving roots NASCAR owner there is. But we've seen both Austin Dillon and more specifically Kyle Busch struggle as a result of that. They haven't adapted to the next gen car. They haven't adapted to what modern NASCAR needs to be. And you're comparing apples and oranges here, but in the same way with leadership that seems to not understand how team dynamics can work and how whatever you say can affect, like what your drivers are thinking and what they're willing to do for the team. Like over time, it just gets repetitive. And like you said, the Cowboys, that's also a very, very good comparison there, because it's just, you never learn. And what is it going to take to actually learn? Because you have the mechanics, you have the engineering. I'm not saying they can automatically be championship contenders and the best constructor year after year for the next 30 years, but you have the infrastructure in place and the people in place to be at least somewhat competitive and go for the drivers and constructors championship almost every year. But if there's a consistent reason that can be pinned on leadership, why are you, even if you can't change leadership, why is leadership not looking into changing? Just take a hard look at yourself and realize, yeah, you have the Ferrari brand, but if you want to actually perform, there's some fairly simple changes that you need to do. Top to bottom culture change from a business perspective, managerial is very common. I think if they were to have that top to bottom change, they would be in really good shape. But clearly, 3 weeks left in the season, making comments like that going into next year, I don't think we're seeing that anytime soon.
Yeah, good way to wrap things up. Lots of drama with Ferrari, and we'll see how it continues to play out. Again, an off weekend for F1. Lando Norris has the points lead after a dominant weekend in Sao Paulo, winning the sprint and the race. Oscar Piastri gets a penalty for wrecking Charles Leclerc, and Kimi Antonelli ends up finishing 5th. Antonelli hangs on somehow and ends up 2nd. Max Verstappen goes 19th to 3rd, so Verstappen still staying in the hunt. Lando Norris, though, can clinch as early as Qatar. 3 races left in the year. Next up will be Vegas in a week's time, and of course we're going to have a lot of coverage leading up to the 3rd American Grand Prix of the year next week. But let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to shift to NASCAR. I've avoided talking about the lawsuit the last few weeks because I feel like a lot of the conversation is repetitive, but there's a new development that we have to discuss, and it involves someone who's not NASCAR or 2311 or Front Row Motorsports. It's Rick Hendrick. We're going to dive into that and talk about the start times for NASCAR in 2026 in a couple of minutes. We're going to take a break here. Motorsports Today. Eddie Kalegi, Adam Tropper here with you on 88.7 FM, WRSU.org, always available on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. This is Eddie Kalegi, and you're tuned in to Motorsports Today. Now, back to the show. Back here live, Motorsports Today. Reminder, every episode available YouTube, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Motorsportstoday.net, the place for all of our written content. Find us on the socials at Motorsports Today, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, Instagram, TikTok. You can find us there. I'm Eddie Kalegi, Adam Tropper here with you. Let's get into NASCAR. So I know we don't feel like talking about the lawsuit, but now we have to, because there's a very interesting development with 3 weeks before the trial is set. The trial's set to begin December 8th. The teams want a conversation, a deposition from Rick Hendrick before he stands trial as a witness to NASCAR between December 1st and December 7th. Allegedly, Rick's schedule doesn't align with that. I mean, that is a load of you-know-what. Let's be honest here. Rick Hendrick isn't even at the track half the time, and there's no races going on. He definitely has the time to do it. He simply does not want to speak, and let's be real here, he did sign the charter agreement. And we'll talk about where Rick Hendrick kind of lies in all of this, but I want to speak from the perspective of Rick Hendrick first, Tropper. What does Rick Hendrick even get from NASCAR losing this lawsuit? Yes, it's pro teams, and 2311 Racing, Front Row Motorsports are fighting for the teams, but let's be real here. They're fighting for the middle and lower tier teams. The current financial situation of NASCAR does not hamper Hendrick Motorsports one bit. They're willing to sign onto the charter agreement because right now, without anything changing, Hendrick Motorsports remains a top dog, just like Penske and just like Joe Gibbs Racing. That's why JGR and Penske aren't really active in this either. Why does Hendrick want to change a system where they are the top team? They've won 15 of 30 championships. They're getting the right amount of revenue sharing, at least in their eyes. There's no incentive for Rick Hendrick to help the teams, especially when neither one is a Chevrolet affiliate. So for me, I understand the frustration from people who want 2311 and Front Row Motorsports to win the suit, where they're thinking, hey, Rick Hendrick's being a traitor, he's siding with the sport and not the teams. But why would Rick Hendrick throw himself into this? There's no reason for him to. He's getting exactly what he wants. Hendrick Motorsports is the most successful team in the sport. Let's be honest, any NASCAR driver coming up, their dream is to race for Hendrick Motorsports. And that hasn't changed, and the current financial structure of NASCAR is not hampering that at all. So there's no real reason for Rick Hendrick to want to aid the teams in this scenario.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and people joke that Rick Hendrick is the golden boy or the golden team of NASCAR. But even regardless of that, I mean, it's pretty obvious that from any team, they're going to be the ones that are safe. Like, I don't want to say they're untouchable, but they're truly the ones that are safe in the eyes of NASCAR and their revenue and everything. Although I believe there was a report from not too long ago, a few years ago, where Jeff Gordon actually said that Hendrick Motorsports wasn't being profitable at the time. Maybe that's changed with the charters, but even so, regardless, Hendrick's still making more money, even if they aren't profitable. Their deficit is not going to be as bad as other teams. That's what I'm trying to say, is that Rick Hendrick is still sitting pretty, and he's kind of impartial here, as you said. Like, I assume he would want whatever benefits that the teams are able to get if 2311 were to win. But at the same time, once again, it's nothing off his back if NASCAR wins, and there's no reason for him to put his neck out on the line to put NASCAR under a bus, and not like there would be any retaliatory penalties, but just why risk ruining those relationships? And remember, he would be under oath. He would have to open his books just like NASCAR did, have to disclose everything, probably a lot of topics that he would prefer to not talk about. And from a business perspective, I don't blame him. The only thing I can think of from the trial, though, is, as you said, a load of you-know-what, his schedule, it's also around Thanksgiving. People have time, and I don't know legally, like this whole scheduling thing, how trying to avoid the deposition can affect him or affect the entire trial as a whole. That's what I wish I knew more from the legal perspective, what the implications of this could be, because I know he is set to be disposed, and that. So I'll stop before I start talking in circles. But I see why Hendrick doesn't want to be on the disposition, but I don't know if there's anything that anyone could do at this point. I feel like he's just going to have to suck it up. I don't know if it's scheduling, but he has until December 8th. The trial starts the 1st, and I think I saw that depositions cannot happen the first week, but it could even happen the 8th or later. So he's not going to escape that deposition.
And I think it's interesting, too, when you consider Roger Penske and where he falls into this, because I suffice to say, I don't think Roger Penske really wants to be opening his books either, given the fact that Roger Penske, if we're really talking about monopolies and antitrust, maybe the most questionable one of all is the fact that the same man...
He's in even worse situation. But the only thing that I could see if Penske goes up on the stand, and this is all hypothetical right now, but if Penske and his ownership of the IndyCar series and Indianapolis Motor Speedway, if that's the closest to a monopoly to NASCAR, maybe NASCAR is trying to prove that they aren't the monopoly, because Penske could be acting as direct competition. So that's maybe an angle. But at the same time, why would Penske want to open his books? Just common sense. I mean, from a business standpoint. So it's kind of like I'm not even sure if how to phrase it, but it's kind of it's a lose-lose situation. That's the easiest way to put it at this point for both Penske and Hendrick. Why would they put themselves out on the line when they don't have to? I mean, like I said, they could want the benefits that 2311 could be getting if that side wins the case, but they don't need to be the ones right now to risk everything they have for not even a guarantee that side will win.
And another angle I'd say maybe kind of going off your point, Tropper, is another framework that you can kind of look at this as is if NASCAR's legal team kind of uses Roger Penske as the example of, hey, we might be doing this, but we're not doing what he's doing. I mean, NASCAR doesn't own any teams. I know they do own tracks, but the fact that Roger Penske owns the series, the track, their staple track in Indianapolis, and has teams that compete that have had multiple serious violations of rules, including at Indianapolis this past year and the season opener at St. Petersburg the year prior that was discovered more than a month after the race happened. I almost feel like if I'm in the shoes of NASCAR's legal team, I'd almost use Roger Penske as the example of, hey, don't be going after us. There's a much more questionable situation happening in IndyCar right now. So I'm not saying they're going to suddenly turn on Roger Penske and use him to make their own case, but I don't think that's the worst strategy in the world.
I am legitimately starting to think that might be their strategy. Be like, hey, IndyCar has a charter system too. IndyCar has a system where they own a track. And you know what else? Penske owns a team. So it's not going to lead to another full lawsuit. Like, that's not how the legal system works. It's not going to immediately go on to Roger Penske, all the blame. But that might be NASCAR's best action to avoid any real penalties for monopolistic practices, being like, hey, the other big American motorsport series is doing the exact same thing as us. I'm not sure if that's going to work. I bet you Roger Penske does not want to be on that stand regardless. But if he is going to have to be under oath, if he is going to be disposed, which is obviously looking like what's going to happen, it should make for a very, very interesting trial. And with only a few weeks out, we've been talking about it for the better part of the year. Well, there probably won't be a settlement, but you never know. Technically, that's still the case, but we're 3 weeks out. I mean, I think the trial is going to happen. The depositions are going to happen. Everything's going to be opened up. Yeah, right before the championship weekend, we saw NASCAR's financials be open for the first time ever. This is as real as it gets. The books have been open. The gloves are off, and it's only going to continue.
Yeah, I think that they were legitimately trending towards a settlement, and then we saw Kessler make the comment like 4 weeks ago, and then right around championship weekend was when everything started to spiral. So we're headed to trial. We know this is going to happen. But last point I kind of want to make too. I don't know what kind of influence NASCAR has had on the leadership of IndyCar or the leadership of V8 supercars, even though, of course, they have tie-ins with both. But the fact that both of those series have adopted NASCAR staples now, whether it's charters in IndyCar or a playoff elimination system in V8 supercars, it almost feels like NASCAR, maybe certain people in the industry, have kind of encouraged those series to adopt their things to make NASCAR not seem as questionable at times. And I'm not saying that this lawsuit has anything to do with playoffs necessarily, but I just feel like NASCAR almost wants more series to do things the way they do to make themselves not seem like some exclusive crazy place. And I think that's a big thing, a big point of emphasis for them. And I think the most interesting point of emphasis that we've never really talked about on the show yet, Tropper, but 2 weeks ago this morning when we were sitting there and we heard Steve Phelps talk and he had the written statement, his focus on the whole thing was that charters are not going away from NASCAR anytime soon.
Mm-hmm. He even said that he does not see this as an antitrust lawsuit, which it is. But that statement too from Steve Phelps really showed like where they stood on it. They are holding on to business, and it really makes it interesting because if the charter system isn't going to be eliminated, and I think even 2311 and Front Row, I think their side, like there were some points where they weren't advocating for the end of charters either, just better benefits for the charter teams. So it's bizarre because you really don't know, regardless of which side wins, what the new outcome is going to be, how things are going to be restructured. So it's just a mess overall, and I honestly am speechless. I think most of the industry is. But wait, one more thing. I almost forgot because sorry, that's on me because going in a bunch of different circles. But I do want to speak on the V8 Supercars and kind of what you said.
Yeah.
Your theory about maybe other series like wanting to follow suit. I'm going to push back on that a little bit, just because, especially overseas, especially abroad, I think those series are going to do what's best for them. Yes, it's good to have NASCAR marketing. Look at V8 Supercars, SVG, and Scott McLaughlin going to IndyCar. Those guys have made real headway in American motorsports and have brought viewership down to Australia. But I don't think they're doing the playoffs because NASCAR told them to. I think we could say what you want about the playoff system. I think, if anything, they're trying to get it's clearly a bad read, I think, by leadership, but I think they're trying to find a way to get the American viewers to stay and watch. So I think they all have their own interests. It's just lining up in a way where NASCAR might be able to exploit that in the case.
So, as if we haven't complained enough about NASCAR-related stuff given the lawsuit, I do want to talk about something else that came out this week, and that's the start times for races in 2026. And for that, we might as well head into Road Rage. What is this going to accomplish?
That is a horrible way to go about it.
We love racing, but sometimes things rub us the wrong way.
How do you expect this kid to have any sort of confidence? It's completely ridiculous.
It was moronic. It was so stupid.
You can't make this up, and you can't excuse it either.
It's time for Road Rage on Motorsports Today.
All right, so a lot of this we already knew was going to be happening. I'll first talk about a couple of positives, I want to say. I do enjoy the Sunday night races, especially during the summer when you don't have competition. Allows people to have their Sundays, have their beach days, family days, whatever they're going to do, and then come home and watch a race at night. And there are 3 straight Sundays in the summer with night races, all going to be good races. Chicago, Atlanta, and North Wilkesboro, all part of the in-season challenge. I don't think that many people care about that, but they do care about those races because those are at 3 very good venues, including the first points race at North Wilkesboro since, I believe, 1996. So that'll be cool. But and the other thing I do want to say, too, I'm very excited that one of the Big Fox races this year is going to be Kansas. Kansas has been the best track for NASCAR over the last few years. 3 extremely memorable finishes over the last 4 races for the Cup Series there, including the closest finish in NASCAR history, and an unbelievable race this past fall. I'm excited that Kansas is going to get the network exposure that it is due. But when we talk about network exposure, this is the thing that annoys me most. This is no knock on the Charlotte Roval. This is no knock on St. Petersburg. 2 great venues. I think it's cool that NASCAR's doing this tie-in with IndyCar. I also think that the Truck Series sometimes gets a little overhated. This year, the Truck Series product was significantly better than the last 2 years. It wasn't nearly as many wreck fests, especially with everything that went down with the championship 2 years ago with Heim and Hocevar and all that. But the fact that 2 truck races get put on Big Fox, and they're both road course races, one at a track that the Truck Series has never been to before, one at a track that the Truck Series has only been to once before. And when there is such a lack of NASCAR races on network television because, again, the deal that they've agreed to, I think they chased a bit more of money versus exposure, while IndyCar valued exposure versus money, and I think he's going to reap the rewards from it. There's so few NASCAR races on network television. You have 5 Cup races on Fox. You have 4 Cup races on NBC. And then you have these 2 random truck road course races that are going to be network broadcasts and might be 2 of the worst actual products that you get from any of the national series this entire season. Because if we saw anything with Watkins Glen and the Roval this year, I think St. Petersburg is going to be an absolute wreck fest for the Truck Series, and I don't think the Roval is going to be much better. Talladega's not even on Big Fox this year for trucks. I don't understand why any truck races... What's up?
Finale isn't either, which granted not always has been, but it would have been at Homestead. I will say, though, why not put San Diego on there? San Diego Trucks isn't even going to be open to fans. It's military only that Friday night. So, wouldn't that be a perfect option? Remember how much viewership even the Xfinity race for Chicago Street got the first time they went there? Why is the San Diego truck race not going to be on main Fox if they're putting road courses on there anyway.
Yeah, I don't get that either. I just don't understand why you're putting the truck road course races on network television. I don't understand why this is part of the contract. This is not the races that I feel like you want exposed to the national broadcast. You want your cup races. You want your best races on there. I don't understand why truck races are on Fox in general, but I really don't understand why it's these two particular. Well, I understand why St. Petersburg because of the IndyCar tie-in. I don't understand why the truck roval race is going to be on Fox. I just don't understand it, and I think it's just very frustrating the way things shook out. And the other thing I want to complain about, Tropper, is we've heard all of this talk about how NBC Sports is launching its regional sports network again next week, and that NASCAR somehow in this contract ended up getting lost in the shuffle, and instead of their races ending up back on NBC Sports Network, 10 races are going to be on USA, broadcast by USA Sports, and I don't really know how that's going to affect the actual quality of the broadcast, which I hope it doesn't, but I'm just a little, uneasy about that, and again, getting kind of forgotten about on a network that now won't be sports-centric since NBC literally has its sports channel back.
I mean, I'll push back on that a little bit just from what I've seen at Columbia. We talk about this in the sport management department all the time about RSNs. Granted, NBC is a massive brand, and NBC Sports was around for a long time. But if you're looking at it from a regional sports network perspective, and frankly, cable as a whole, and we've talked about this too, cable's dying still. Regional sports networks, RSNs, are still dying. And even before NBC Sports took a hiatus, I guess now you could say, USA is still available to more households in America than NBC Sports was. So the broadcast, I don't even think they'll change. Will probably still be produced the same way, and that I don't know if that's for better or for worse, admittedly. But I'm actually not too worried about that because I think if they play their cards right, USA can actually lean into that even more, having NASCAR as the primary sport that they could advertise for their channel. So if this is all just me from a marketing perspective and business perspective, I think it could actually be a really good thing. The question is, will it actually be when it's implemented?
Yeah, now I'll push back on that a bit, Tropper, and I know that the USA races this year have not been available on Peacock, but when we're talking about the future and that cable's dying and everything, the streaming services are very important too. And Peacock is tied in with NBC, not Venture Sports, not USA Sports. It's tied in with NBC. So you're not even going to get the app exposure of these races that are on USA. And now that's a certainty because they're going to be completely split off from Peacock and I guess split off from the NBC Sports app. So I don't know if there's any sort of digital way to watch these races besides having the USA Network. That's what worries me, Tropper, and why I just feel like I know it's very difficult to predict the future. I know things are constantly evolving in the way that we consume media, but when you tie into these 7-year, 7-figure TV deals, I just feel like you need to be maybe a little proactive in making sure that there aren't loopholes where you could lose the exposure that you wanted. Now, granted, I don't know if anybody projected that NBC was going to bring back its sports channel or that it was going to split its sports subsidiaries with USA, but I just feel like there should have been some sort of preparation where NASCAR does not, end up being lost in the shuffle in this.
Yeah, I think they honestly just got the short end of the stick because honestly, a 7-year contract was better than their last one, which was 11 years. And they went to new providers this time around. Obviously, TNT Sports, Warner Brothers, and then Prime. What they've done with that has been incredible. People want more of Prime, obviously, after what we saw last year. But they were willing to expand into streaming. And think about the driver cams on HBO Max every single week. So I feel like the progress has been there, and it was looking good. But NBC, they just gave NASCAR the short end of the stick here, potentially. Like I said, I do think there is a world where if the marketing's done right and maybe there becomes a digital platform or some way to watch it, whether it's through the NBC Sports app still, that could be a possibility. But I don't think it's an end-all, be-all detriment for the second half of the season yet. I mean, it remains to be seen, but maybe I'm just trying to be cautiously optimistic. But once again, I don't see NBC Sports as this mecca of sports television, because it's already proven to be a failed experiment once. And as we said, cable and RSNs are dying. So even with USA, if there is a chance for these races to still be streamed online in some capacity, I think we're going to be just fine. It's a 7-year deal. This will already be the end of year 2 after 2026. So these things go pretty quick. There's already going to be renegotiations happening probably within the next 2 to 3 years.
Well,
So,
yeah, but I mean
number ratings.
that's still more than half a decade away before they're actually physically on another network. And also, I just want to say,
yes, but I feel like there are things that could be changed and things that could be moved around a little bit, at least maybe to get more leverage on the main NBC again.
Yeah, but I think I know NBC Sports Network failed before, but NBC has way more sports now than it did then. NBC has the NBA. NBC has college football besides Notre Dame and college basketball. That's 3 huge sports that they did not have the first time around that are going to be tied in with this. There are a lot more sports consumers' eyes on NBC now than NBC 8 years ago. That's why I'm very cautionary and I'm frustrated that NASCAR has just been forgotten about when NBC has all these other properties that are bringing more eyes, and now NASCAR is going to be, left to USA, where I don't know what else is actually going to be there sports-wise besides WWE.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually very fair, which is why I think, once again, with NBC Sports splitting from USA, that's the million-dollar question. Is there going to be some integration with streaming, whether it's still NBC Sports, whether maybe there is a Peacock deal? That would, I think, be the most beneficial, although Peacock, their subscriptions numbers still aren't as high as other streaming services, obviously. But if there's a way to get digital and still get to more fans, it's weird, because I see what you're saying, but it's hard to knock them too hard when this was out of their hands. Yes, they put themselves in this position from the contract, but I don't put this one all on NASCAR. I'm actually putting my anger more towards NBC and the media that signed on. They paid the money to broadcast this for the fans, to pay that. This was a significant investment for all media entities involved to get the rights, and they're throwing it to the side. For what purpose? That's what frustrates me more than anything.
Well, we'll leave it at that. We'll see how things shake out, but NASCAR's times, dates, all set for 2026, as well as the date for the lawsuit trial coming up. First time since February 8th, Tropper, that we have no races this weekend in NASCAR, IndyCar, or Formula One. Hard to believe, but
insane time. The time flies. I mean, it was a great season, especially in the NASCAR world. F1, as you said, we got a little bit left, but one good thing about motorsports is that it has the shortest off season, so we'll be right back at it pretty soon.
Yeah, already 2 weeks into the NASCAR off season, and we're only 10 weeks away from the Clash, so it definitely goes fast. But F1 will be back on track next week with the Las Vegas Grand Prix, and we will get you set for that on the show. So that'll do it for this episode of Motorsports Today. If you are listening live on WRSU, the student section with Nick Hart and Sean Newcomb is coming up next. For Adam Tropper, I'm Eddie Kalegi, signing off of this edition of Motorsports Today, reminding you, as always, to enjoy the weekend and enjoy the racing.